Hi y'all, welcome to another episode of Finally Finding Me. When I put the first one out, I gave a little bit of a background of who I am, in hopes that people would want to go on this self-discovery journey with me. But to give it a little bit more, let's talk about some of those aspects of it. I guess one of the biggest things, and what I want to talk to you about today, is being an only child. Finding out that birth order really matters was kind of interesting to me. And being an only child is probably a lot harder than people think. It's so funny. I get the same reaction every time I tell somebody I'm an only child. Oh, you must be spoiled. Oh, I wish it was that way. I mean, in some ways, yes. Obviously, being an only child, especially a girl, and you have one that you can actually spend, that your parents can spend a lot of time with and on, could do that way. But my dad was military and very strict. So it actually was not a good thing as everybody thinks it was. It was a little bit frustrating growing up, especially being a girl. But we were talking about being an only child. I was at a conference this past week. More to come about those conferences when we get into digging in deeper who you are and some of the things that you should do to help yourself with that journey. But was with a group of people, and they had a whole talk about birth order, and I thought it was really interesting because I really had never thought that much about the birth order of it. But they were saying how Alfred Adler has a theory about that, and when we started to delve into this, it really started to make sense. So he had the idea, I've got notes here because I know that I will not remember everything. He said that whether you're firstborn, middle, youngest, or only, influences a person's development. It impacts traits like responsibility, ambition, and independence. And so here's kind of like the breakdown of what he kind of discovered going through his research. And I thought these were very interesting. Firstborns, often perceived as authoritative, responsible, ambitious. They may also be prone to perfectionism, a desire for control due to early expectations, and need to set an example. They're usually high achievers, natural leaders, adult pleasers, and obey all the rules. And I find that interesting. I think that is kind of the case. Most people I have met that are firstborns definitely have those traits. They have to be the one in the family. Well, actually, they're the guinea pigs. So I think the parents try a little harder right off the gate, to make sure they instill some of these things and expect so much more out of them when the second children come along, because they feel like, okay, you've already been through this process, now you need to help your siblings. So we did a kind of a worksheet on how we felt about being in each thing and where we thought our siblings fell in, and so I had a little bit difficult time doing the exercise because being an only child. But after going through this, it actually made more sense of who I am as an only child. So the middle child may feel sandwiched between the older ones, between the younger and the older, potentially leading to a sense of being overlooked, tendency towards peacemaking or rebellion. They're usually flexible because they have to be more flexible. Easygoing, peacemakers, independent, strong negotiators, and may feel like life's unfair because they're like stuck in the middle. Sometimes they feel overlooked. I guess I can understand that way, and especially talking with my peers, doing this exercise, it really stood out. Younger children, they're often described as being pampered, outgoing. They may exhibit need for attention, a tendency to challenge authority. Some of my friends have said that their younger children were just wild because their younger siblings were wild because mom and dad had just finally gotten to the point, well, oh, okay, whatever, with the youngest ones. But they're also risk takers. They're more outgoing, they're competitive, and sense of humor, but definitely rebellious. So as they got to the only children one, this all really started to make sense. Say the characteristics of an only child they can share with the firstborns and the middle one and the younger ones, because they kind of get all of that at one time. So they say they can be high achieving and independent, also may struggle with social interactions and tendency to be centered on them, and that's only because they have that whole, not having to fight it out with their siblings and not understanding, that concept. They're very close to their parents. They're mature, dependable, unforgiving, and private, which after going through all of this, it all makes sense now. Being an only child means you are it. You have to be it for your parents. So if you do something wrong, or you feel like your life is, let's put it this way. This is the way I felt as an only child. I didn't have the luxury of saying, making mistakes, and my siblings will make up for it. They'll be the ones that make mom and dad proud. It was me, and I felt like that from a very, very young age. And I tended to be a very sensitive child. So, like when my dad was mad at me, I really wasn't as much worried about getting in trouble and being punished, but I was worried about disappointing them, not being, being what they wanted me to be. That made very tough on me because I really wanted to please them. And it said that, you tend to be people pleasers, high achievers, I'm trying to think, obeys all the rules. Especially with a military father, and that's going to be another segment coming up about being a military brat as well. I think all of this really does affect how we are. Obviously, there's more things that come into play, especially about being where you live, where you grew up at, north versus south, and that's another whole segment to talk about, because definitely that had a big part to play in it. But I encourage you guys to go out there and do some work on it. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there online that I was reading about. There's tests that you can take for your personality traits, but it gets you to understand your place in your role as growing up, how you became who you are. And with my search of self-discovery, this was one of the things that really hit home, was my birth order, being an only child and feeling like I had to be the first, the second, and the third born in my household. It explained a lot about who I was. And it's great because when you're learning about who you are, you can make changes that you want to make because you're older, and you can say, oh, well, my beliefs came from this, but do I really believe that way? My traits are this way, but can I change them? And I think that is what we're all doing in a self-discovery, is finding the good parts of ourselves and enhancing them, finding the not so good parts and trying to change them, but also understanding other people along your way or who have been in your life to do that. So, if you're a middle child, you can understand what your siblings were going through too as well. You may not have gotten along with them, but this birth order really made a big difference with me. It's where my perfectionism came in. I know that for sure. It's where, I was never I felt like I was never really a kid. My parents never talked baby talk. I was always kind of like a little adult. My conversations were a lot more mature. And it's funny because I saw that in my daughter. She's the firstborn, and it's the same thing. Her vocabulary was really good because a lot of people would talk to her just as they had talked to me and said, I just don't feel like I'm talking to a 2-year-old. Her conversation skills. And that's because I spent a lot of time around adults. My parents were my playmates. So that's why I became the way I am. So I encourage you guys, take some time, check out the birth order information. I'll put some links at the bottom of this of some really interesting articles that I found, and take some time to really dive into that thing. Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? I would love to see your comments in the bottom. Do you understand this? Was it helpful? There's going to be a lot of delving into different things coming up here, but I thought this was probably one of the good places to start because it's where we start.